Welcome back to the series on how to EQ like a pro. This week we're going to be talking about the drum bus. You want to learn how to EQ your drum bus or some cool tactics you can do to get your drums sounding nice with your bus? Check this video out. Okay, welcome back to the series on EQing like a pro. If you missed last week, I talked about snares. You can go catch up on that. I also spoke already about kick drums and claps, and today we are going to be talking about the drums as a whole. So if you went through all the steps of picking the right sounds and carving space with EQ, using ghost notes, layering, all the tricks I talked about before, and you're still finding you need some additional processing, you can actually take a look at the drum bus and process as a group. So I've loaded up this simple little beat that a friend of mine, Chris Cutts, and I were working on. It's kind of like an Afro beats beat. We were fooling around with a cool little Cassie melody over it. Give you an example of it right here. Stay tuned for a project from us. We haven't done something in a while and we've got some music sitting around. And as you can see, we just made this one day. We didn't even touch it after that. And so I don't even have a lot of the tactics I'm talking about. I don't even have EQs really. This is exactly why I selected this, because I wanted to show you something bare bones. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit briefly about the drum bus. So there's three things that you can address on the drum bus that I suggest you try to do. The first one is going to be EQ. Now you can EQ all of the drums at once, or you can individually group things together. For example, if you have layers of claps like you saw in my previous video, you might want to EQ the clap bus. If you have, say, a kick and a top kick and you group that together, you could do that. But then you could actually have groups within groups. For the purpose of this video, I'm just going to group all of my drums into one bus and call it the drum bus. Okay, on this bus, I loaded 4 EQs and we're going to talk about each one. The first one is just your stock Ableton EQ. As you can see, maybe we want to shelf the highs. Not bad. It gives it a lot of mid-range. Might need to move that over. Maybe I just want it on that top end. Oh, you know what? Those claps are a little annoying. You know, I think I want to take a little 1K out. Much nicer. You know, and I think I want to shelf as well around 80 hertz, 80, 90 hertz. Sharpen that up. Here's the drum bus before these simple 3 EQ moves. And after. Wow. What a difference. And part of that is just knowing how to EQ really well, hearing frequencies and being able to spot those. So drum bus EQ can be great because you can really enhance the whole bus without making a lot of moves individually on all of the tracks. But number one, I suggest, as all the previous videos, you find good sounds. Step 1, use good sounds. Step 2, make sure those sounds have space, and in the mix they have their own space. You carve, you do everything you can before just automatically going to the drum bus. Let's take a look at another EQ, a different style. API, these UAD recreations are some of my favorite EQs. I made a video on this series. I'll leave you a link. You can check that out. Now, similar thing, we'll try to do a similar thing with this, but this EQ is going to give it a lot of color. These EQs are very colorful. And I love that about them. So be aware of that. Now let's go ahead and play this again. And I'm going to give this guy a boost at 50. We're gonna go ahead and cut a little at 1.5. And what we'll do is we'll boost over here. And hit that high shelf. And so I'm not here to explain all the controls on this EQ. If you're curious, check out my previous video, but I'm gonna hit the low shelf as well and bring this up to 100. There's before and after. Here's this EQ. There's very similar. Let's bring this down a little bit. Look, almost identical. This one has a little bit more high upper mids. But one thing to note about this EQ is it's also adding that color. You can actually turn this off and still get the color of this EQ without having the EQ on. And here, no color. Notice that? Very subtle. So I love this EQ. Great, great, great EQ. And one thing to note, this EQ will get sharper the more you boost or cut. So the Q gets narrower, the more the knob, the more counterclockwise or clockwise the knob goes. I hope that makes sense. Like I said, you could check out my API series videos if you want some more information on this one. Okay, here we have the other API, which is a graphic style EQ. This thing is very touchy. Same thing. You can get the color just by hitting the in. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this on. Let's try to dial in some of those same settings. So we did some boosts around 80, not even up to 125. We cut, and then we boosted. Look at how silky. I love this one too. This one's silky. I don't use this one enough. Look at that. Woo. That's beautiful. Here's the other API. This one's a little more. That just brought out all those highs. And look how minimal I'm actually using this. Here's the other Ableton EQ. So I gotta tell you, the 560 is one of my favorite EQs. And it's one of my go-tos, but it's one of my kind of secret weapons that I don't touch enough, if that makes any sense. Yeah, that sounds great. Before and after. So 560 API, if you don't have it, go get it. Last but not least, we're gonna check out this EQ called Chop Shop by Plugin Alliance. And it's actually a recreation of some hardware. It looks rather unique. It's very simple to use. And the reason I chose this is because it's a different style of an EQ. And I know we're not gonna be able to get the same exact result, but this is a great EQ to use on a bus because it's basically a low cut and a high cut, and it has a focus mode section. I've pulled up the actual manual here so you can check out some of these controls because this looks a little daunting if you're a beginner. And basically, once again, you have a high cut here, you have a resonance knob which will boost the cut range, and then you have a frequency range shifter which will shift one range 1 octave lower, the high range 1 octave lower. You have your low cut section here where you can bump the resonance control for the low cut. That adds the resonance bump at the corner frequency. You have the low cut sweep here. You have a low rider. This mix fader sets the balance of the low pass and dry signals, so it's like a mix knob. And then you have the low rider switch, which transforms the low cut section into a low pass filter. So you've got a cut or a low pass, so it's very unique. And then the focus section is just an intuitive filter that rebalances the bass and treble energy of the sound. So you really have, and then there's a power switch. So you really have a very limited range of controls. So let's see what we can do with this thing. So if I wanted to shift that treble, you can hear it's very subtle. And then if I hit that switch, it becomes more apparent. I like that. Now let's turn this thing into that low bump around 60, 80 hertz. This will turn it into a cut. Very transparent, very subtle EQ. And then if you wanted to roll off some of your highs, though there's before, and here's after. Let's see how close we got. Obviously that API just adds a lot just in that upper range. This one is very different than the others. Let's go to this one. I got closer with the Chop Shop. to the API 550A. I like all of them. They all have their own sound. Okay, last but not least, I want to talk about glue compression. And if you caught the series before, I talked a lot about glue. So I'm going to go ahead and remove some of these EQs. I'll go ahead and leave the chop shop in the API just for the sake of the video. We can go back and forth, but right now I'm going to leave the chop shop on. And glue compression can help the transients of the drums, just soften them up. The transients got real apparent with the API 560. If you want some really nice glue, you can just go slow attack, fast release. Not too much compression. Speed up the attack if you want to hit those transients. So you see how the glue can kind of just bring the drums up, melt them all together, kind of make them smooth them out almost. And let's go to this API. That's a lot of compression. So yeah, that's my tips for drum bus EQ. And although glue compression is not part of EQ, it's a great way to get your drums sounding very professional. Thank you for watching this video on how to EQ your drum bus. If you have any questions, please shoot me a comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and the bell notification will keep you up to date. My name is Freddie from Distinct Mastering. Next week, we are going to be getting into how to EQ your bass. And if you missed last week, I'm going to leave you a link now. We went into how to EQ your snares. Stay tuned.